Hey everybody, it's Spicy Kai. Today I want to talk to you about California's Assembly Bill 392 from a Californian's point of view. Not only do I think it's a really good idea for the state itself, but I believe that this is a great way for the entire nation to start a dialogue that we should have been having a long time ago. But first, before we get started, please hit that thumbs up button, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to click subscribe and hit that notification button so you get notified every time I upload a new video about that Cali life. Now let's get into the content.
It was a community-driven effort, community coalition-based organizations of families that were impacted in social justice organizations in California. A coalition called Let Us Live. It's very important for not only California, but for the nation. The communities that we come from and the families that have experienced these issues have had no legal recourse. And in this state particularly, 2017 alone, 172 people were shot and killed by police and law enforcement, which was one of the deadliest states in the country.
The California Department of Justice shows an uptick in the number of deaths last year during confrontations between police and suspects.
The report indicates that in most of the deaths, officers believe the suspects were armed. We're here on Del Paso Boulevard, where Joseph Mann was shot and killed by Sacramento police 2 years ago this week. Many still healing from that. So with this report showing that more civilians were killed by the hands of police, some say it's just a reminder that change is needed.
The next clip is dash cam video of the shooting of Joseph Mann. I sped it up just to make it a little bit shorter, but I did slow it down on every section where the police were actually interacting with him verbally and at the end when the actual shooting took place. Check it out.
Sir, get on the ground. Dog, get out of here. Leave this area. Get out of here. Go down the alley. Get out of here. Get on the ground. Put the knife down. Get on the ground. You're with the black backpack. Stop. Put your hands in the air and drop the knife. Stop right there. Put your hands in the air. Drop the knife. Stop right there. Put your hands in the air. Drop the knife. Sir, we don't want to hurt you. Drop the knife. Get off the street. Sir, drop the knife. Get down now. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Sir, stop blocking. Put the knife down. All occupants, get off the street. Hit him. You're gonna hit him. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna force it. Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Man, no, stop.
controversial shooting death of Joseph Mann, who was shot 14 times by Sacramento police in 2016.
Our community is still healing from that, let alone the series of officer-involved shootings that has happened since then.
To the tragic 2018 shooting of Stephon Clark that sparked protests week after week through the streets of Sacramento. The California Department of Justice's 2017 report indicates that there were 707 use of force incidents that resulted in serious injury or death. Most were from gunshot wounds. In all, 2 officers were killed and 172 civilians. That number higher than last year. And in the majority of the deaths, officers thought the suspects were armed.
This is an opportunity to build trust through reform.
Now, the victims in the 2017 use of force report were mainly Hispanics and people of color.
My name is Marissa Barrera. I'm from Woodland, California. I'm here because my brother is right here, Michael Barrera. This is my older brother. He was killed by officers of the Woodland Police Department on February 8, 2017. He was killed while he was in handcuffs, and he was not armed. He's unarmed, not posing a threat. And then he was ultimately tasered multiple times, beaten, and suffocated to death.
We will win. We have nothing to lose but the change.
Growing up, being a young woman from East Oakland, I got to experience a lot of one-on-one encounterments with the police. A lot of my friends have bad stories, with the cops, so we had never seen them as, friends or people who would protect our communities. The AB392 law has, really sparked something for them. They see it and they're like, dang, people like us, people from our community, because we have East Oakland, we have LA, we have Sacramento coming to, the state capitol, and we're like, we're there, we're supporting our people, because a lot of the mothers here have lost their kids, and no one should ever go through that.
Behind Assembly Bill 392, you might recall it defines when police can use deadly force. Some have said that it's created one of the toughest standards in the nation for whenever law enforcement can kill an individual. Now, the language of the bill mandates that law enforcement use deadly force only when necessary. Under current law, deadly force can be used when reasonable. Now, the law also prevents officers from firing at felons that are running away and don't pose immediate danger. With me now is that bill's co-author, Assemblymember Dr. Shirley Weber of District 79. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you. It's always good to be here.
Definitely. It's good to have you. This bill is watered down. Everyone knows that, but at least we're getting something done. At least we're having the conversation now. Are you happy with how this bill shook down?
We're happy with the bill, and I wouldn't quote Stephon Clark's brother. That's number one. But number two, it's not a Stephon Clark bill. This bill came out of a lot of things that took place from a coalition of individuals who had lost their sons and daughters and family members over a number of years. So this is not necessarily a Stephon Clark issue, because there were things happening before Stephon Clark and things that happened afterwards that continued to shape and mold this bill. It set out to do certain very specific things, and it did those things. So it really isn't watered down. It changed California law, but it also changed the nation in terms of its perception of when we use deadly force. The bill set out to change a law that says you can use it when it's reasonable, and we changed it to when it's necessary. We also changed 147 years law that talked about a fleeing felon, where you could shoot anybody who you thought had committed a felony, which it could be stealing a piece of bread. So as a result, we changed that law as well. We also changed the whole concept of the totality of the circumstances, which demands that it's not just the immediate situation, but what happened before that took place, and did the officer participate in escalating the problem rather than de-escalating the problem, which we've seen happen many, many times before. And so it gives the district attorney and those in authority really some power now to address some issues that they claim they couldn't address because of the current law. And this bill got out of the Assembly with 85% of the vote. It got out of the Senate with 85%. And we were praying to get 51%. I mean, we were praying to get 41 people to vote for this bill, and we got 68 people to vote for it. So what happened was it was really almost a tidal wave of circumstances, as well as continued advocacy on the part of community members. We had the leadership engaged because people began to realize something has to happen. And our members decided that they didn't agree to vote for it initially, but they forced law enforcement to constantly talk to me, because they normally get away with not just talking to people and just say we're opposed to it, and that puts a fear and a damp over the Capitol. But the wave of support from the public was enormous, as well as, interestingly enough, the wave of support from the newspapers across the state. Almost every newspaper, major newspaper in California, supported this bill, thought it was reasonable, thought it was time to change the laws, that they saw what was happening, and for once people said we need a change in law enforcement. We had a lot of law enforcement folks, too, quietly supporting the bill because they were trying to do some of the things we talked about that are best practices. It's not a weird bill. It's a best practice bill. And so what happened was we had law enforcement people, and now they speak out in Orange counties and others, but saying we've been trying to do this, but they didn't have kind of the force behind them. They didn't have the resources. Now they can at least blame me for it and say, hey, we have to do it because, California law, Shirley Weber has put this out there. We got to make change. But many of them had already started to try to do some change in their own training of officers and making sure that they were looking at the situation differently and using different strategies to accomplish it.
There we go. 392 is now law in the state of California. Dr. Weber.
What kind of training? What is the difference in a training environment when you're training an officer to use deadly force only when it's necessary as opposed to when it might be reasonable? What's the difference?
Well, we're about to explore that because we're going to invest an unprecedented amount of money, tens of millions of dollars. We had, of course, this tragic incident just a stone's throw away from where we're sitting right here with Stephon Clark that just ignited a new resolve with a new administration, a fresh set of eyes. I mean, I got a lot of blowback when I said, look, that won't happen if you look like me. I was a candidate for governor when I said that. I stand by that. It's a fact.
It's a fact.
Running south, running to the south.
Hey, what's going on there?
Yeah, this guy's going down the street, breaking windows of cars. He busted both my truck windows out. He busted in the people's backyard right now.
All I can tell is he's got a hoodie on. He's running towards the front yard of 29th Street. 29th Street. He's looking into another car that's in between the fence and the front yard. Over here. So his ground unit Scott, so it looks like might be getting one at gunpoint. Hey! Show me your hand! Stay up! Stay up! 5-7 south. Show me your gun! Show me your hands! Good! Sorry, shots fired. Copy, shots fired. Show me your hands! See your hands!
.570's down. No movement. We're going to need additional units. Come in from the west to east of this yard. Let's see your hands! You alright? You hit? Yeah, I'm good. All right. He was still pointing when I saw again. You alright, dude? Yeah, I'm alright. I don't think I'm hit or anything. I got him at gunpoint, dude. You do a tactical reload, okay? I think I shot about 5 times. 1 Charles 5-4, I want everybody to know we are fine. No officers are hit. Subject's down in the backyard. You have a gun? We have security. We're not moving in until we have more. We don't have it. Do you see it, dude? You can't see the subject's hands. He's still not moved. 3 Sam 5, if you can head this way, we can use a body bunker before we detain him. Hey, can you hear us?
Police department, can you hear us?
We need to know if you're okay. We need to get you
Alright. And if one of you guys want to go hands, cover them.
So let's take a look at California Assembly Bill number 392. If you want to check it out yourself, the link is in the description box. Let's go over some of the most important changes affecting my own local communities. Under the old law, a homicide committed by a peace officer is justifiable when necessarily committed in arresting a person who has committed a felony and the person is fleeing or resisting such arrest. Under the new law, homicide is justifiable when committed by peace officers and those acting by their command in their aid and assistance under either of the following circumstances. It is the intent of the legislature that peace officers use deadly force only when necessary in defense of human life. In determining whether deadly force is necessary, officers shall evaluate each situation in light of the particular circumstances of each case, and shall use other available resources and techniques if reasonably safe and feasible to an objectively reasonable officer.
What's the reason? Alright, so we got a contact that, keep your hands out of your pockets. Possible assault that occurred?
Oh, I didn't touch it.
Okay. Put your hands up. Right. So we got a report of two people, similar descriptions, possibly having a gun, alright? So don't reach for your waist. We're going to just check and make sure that you don't have a weapon, alright? Hands up! Hands up! Hands up!
Individuals with physical, mental health, developmental, or intellectual disabilities are significantly more likely to experience greater levels of physical force during police interactions, as their disability may affect their ability to understand or comply with commands from peace officers. It is estimated that individuals with disabilities are involved in between 1/3 and 1/2 of all fatal encounters with law enforcement.
Myself and my daughter were actually screaming at him, not, that he was deaf, that he couldn't hear anything, and they proceeded on shooting him.
Julio Reyes lives just down the street and saw the whole thing. He says 35-year-old Magdiel Sanchez had never been aggressive toward anyone, and he believes the officers misunderstood his actions.
The guy does movements. He don't speak, he don't hear, so mainly it's hand movements that he does. That's how we communicated with him. And he was actually, I believe he was frustrated trying to tell them what was going on.
Police say it's unclear whether the two officers involved heard what the witnesses were yelling.
I believe they did hear me because one of them turned around and looked at me.
You could get what they call tunnel vision, or you could really lock into just the person that has the weapon. That'd be the threat against you. So.
Stop!
An officer first sees Hall down the street as he approaches two people while armed with a large metal pole in his hand. The officer calls to Hall in an attempt to divert his attention from the residents. Hall immediately appears to turn his attention to the officers and runs toward them. The video shows one officer firing a total of 6 beanbag rounds at Hall in an attempt to stop his approach. These are the first 4 shots you will see and hear. When these shots fail to stop Hall, 2 other officers fire their handguns.
Yes, I'm calling to report my grandson is trying to break into the house. I need someone here right away.
We have a caller from inside of that residence. She's stating she's the grandmother and the grandson is having a mental breakdown. We need to have police at our house. What's happening?
He's being violent. He broke our sliding glass window and he's threatening us with it. He has like this long pole and he's with a metal pole, and he's threatening us with it. But we left the house. And he has mental health issues.
Be back! Stop! Shots fired. Miles! Stop!
Put it down! All right. Stay down.
Cooperate, Miles. Go, Miles.
Okay.
He is cuffed up. All officers are code 4. We need medical to come in. The weapon Hall was carrying was determined to be a large, pointed-end pry bar. The recovered pry bar is pictured here.
A peace officer shall not use deadly force against a person based on the danger that person poses to themselves. If an objectively reasonable officer would believe the person does not pose an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the peace officer or to another person. Before we go, I want to share a story with you that's close to my heart. It's the shooting of unarmed 24-year-old Ryan Twyman, which got very little media coverage here in the LA area. This young man was from the West Side of Compton, the same neighborhood my dad's sister and cousins are from. The West is completely heartbroken. Ryan was shot and killed by 2 LAPD officers when he stepped on the gas in reverse, making his passenger door hit one of the cops. After emptying his clip, the other cop returns to his car to reload. Had AB392 been in place at that time, these cops would have been required by law to let Ryan flee or get in their cars and chase him because he was not an imminent threat to them or others. Check out the footage.
The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department put out this video which shows a controversial deputy-involved shooting that happened here on June 6th, and an unarmed man was killed in that shooting. Let me show you the video now. You're going to see 2 armed sheriff's deputies with their weapons drawn approaching a car. One of them opens the back door of the car, the driver puts it in reverse with that door open, and then the deputies opened fire. They actually fired more than 30 rounds, killing the driver. Now, exactly what happened? Well, here's the background. Deputies say they were trying to arrest a man by the name of Ryan Twyman, 24 years old. He was a convicted felon who was on probation, and he was wanted for the illegal possession of guns. In fact, deputies say they'd found some guns in his home when they'd served a search warrant there back in April. On the evening of June 6th, they say they went to the apartment complex here in Willowbrook to find him. Now, when cops showed up, they say they saw Twyman's car, that Kia Forte. He was inside with another man. Deputies tried to make contact with him. That's when they say he accelerated in reverse with the car door open. That door hit an officer, and the deputies opened fire multiple times. In fact, one officer went back to his patrol car to get a rifle so he could fire more rounds. Here's how a sheriff's commander explains why they decided to shoot.
As the Kia reversed, the passenger side deputy was struck with the open rear passenger door and pushed into the center of the parking lot as he attempted to maintain his balance to avoid being knocked down and run over. At that time, both deputies fired their service pistols at Mr. Twyman in order to stop the vehicle from seriously injuring the passenger deputy.
Twyman was pronounced dead on the scene here. Officers did not find any weapons on him or in his car.